The courtroom buzzed with quiet murmurs as the judge adjusted her glasses and looked over the stack of papers in front of her. It was a high-profile case, one that had drawn in a small sea of reporters, attorneys, and curious onlookers. The atmosphere was thick with tension and anticipation. Angela Winters, a sharp-tongued and high-powered real estate developer in an immaculate designer suit, stood confidently at the witness stand. Her posture was straight, her expression unwavering. She was used to owning rooms, and the courtroom was no exception. Her attorney sat back in his chair, arms crossed, trusting his client to handle herself as she always did, with cold, ruthless precision. Seated just a few rows back was Detective Cole, dressed in plain clothes, his badge clipped subtly at his belt. He sat with his arms folded, calm and unreadable. A man of few words, Cole was used to being underestimated, and this wasn't the first time someone like Angela had looked past him. The opposing counsel asked a routine question about a set of emails Angela had sent, suggesting they might be tied to an attempt to influence a witness. Angela leaned forward, rolled her eyes slightly, and snapped, "Are we really still entertaining anything that came from that nobody over there?" She jerked her thumb toward Cole without even looking at him. "He's just some failed cop looking to make a name for himself. He's got nothing on me. Absolutely nothing." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The judge gave her a sharp look. "Ms. Winters, you will address this court respectfully." Angela didn't flinch. "Of course, Your Honor. I just think it's absurd we're wasting court time on the baseless accusations of someone who clearly doesn't understand how real business works." Detective Cole remained still. He didn't argue. He didn't react. He just stared at her with a quiet intensity that made even the court reporter glance up. Something in his eyes said this wasn't over. Not even close. Angela's words still hung in the air like smoke, sharp, lingering, and toxic. The courtroom had quieted into an uncomfortable stillness, as if no one quite knew how to respond to her outburst. All eyes shifted toward Detective Cole, half expecting a rebuttal or at least a change in expression. But Cole didn't move. Seated calmly in the third row, he leaned back slightly in his seat, his hands clasped lightly in front of him. His face was unreadable, no scowl, no smirk. Just an eerie calm that contrasted sharply with Angela's fiery arrogance. He blinked once, slowly, his eyes fixed on her like a hawk observing prey that hadn't yet realized it was already caught. The judge scribbled a note on her pad, her face tight with irritation, though she didn't call another objection. She simply shook her head as if filing Angela's behavior away for later. The bailiff stood a little straighter, sensing the rising tension in the room. Angela leaned back in the witness chair, crossing her legs with a triumphant smirk, believing she'd just won the courtroom. To her, Cole's silence was confirmation. He had no defense, no evidence, no power. He was just another name on the report, another man who couldn't touch her empire. She didn't notice how carefully the judge was watching Cole, or how the prosecutor's demeanor shifted from defensive to quietly satisfied. Cole's eyes didn't leave Angela for a second. It wasn't hatred or frustration that stared back at her, it was something deeper. Inevitable, like a wave about to crash over a ship that had no idea it was sinking. He didn't need to shout. He didn't need to defend himself. Everything he needed had already been said, and more importantly, already recorded. In that moment, Cole's stillness spoke louder than Angela's bravado. He knew something she didn't, something big, something that would change everything in the next 7 minutes. And as Angela smirked and turned her attention back to her lawyer, she had no idea that her last moment of freedom had already passed. The heavy oak doors of the courthouse creaked open as Angela Winters strode out into the bright afternoon sunlight, flanked by her high-priced legal team. The buzz of reporters waiting on the courthouse steps instantly exploded into a frenzy of camera flashes and shouted questions. Angela, always camera ready, slipped on her designer sunglasses and tilted her chin upward with practiced confidence. "Ms. Winters, do you have a comment on today's testimony? Is it true you insulted a police detective during your statement? Are you worried about how the judge might respond to your remarks?" She waved a manicured hand dismissively, flashing a dazzling smile. "Worried? Please. I told the truth in there, and if that ruffled a few feathers, maybe those feathers needed ruffling." The reporters chuckled nervously, unsure whether to laugh with her or question her audacity. "Detective Cole is just grasping at straws," she continued, pausing on the top step for dramatic effect. "He's a background character in a case that has nothing to do with him. I don't fear men like that. I built a company from the ground up while people like him were still chasing shoplifters." Her attorney gently tapped her arm, trying to pull her away from the cameras, but Angela shook her head. She was in her element now. The idea that I, Angela Winters, would need to tamper with a witness is laughable. I have nothing to hide. They're just trying to drag my name through the mud because I don't fit into their little system. Let them try. From across the street, Detective Cole stood beside an unmarked vehicle, partially obscured by shadows. He didn't move. He simply watched as Angela delivered her impromptu press conference, her words full of venom and arrogance. A faint breeze rustled his coat, but his gaze never wavered. He checked his watch. 6 minutes to go. Angela tossed her hair back, offered one last smug smile to the cameras, and descended the steps with the air of a woman untouchable by consequences. She had no idea her time was almost up, and justice was waiting just around the corner. Detective Cole stepped off the curb and disappeared down the courthouse side alley, away from the media chaos now engulfing Angela's dramatic exit. The buzz of cameras and shouting reporters faded behind him. As he walked, he pulled out his phone, glancing at the screen. One unread message blinked at the top, all confirmed. Standing by, he tapped a brief reply, initiate in 5. Slipping the phone back into his coat, he moved with purpose toward the adjacent parking structure, one reserved mostly for court staff and law enforcement. The concrete echoed with every one of his footsteps. From a distance, he looked like a man casually returning to his car, but everything about his movements was measured, prepared. At the far end of the garage, a black SUV sat idling in a shadowy corner. Its windows were tinted, and the vehicle was strategically parked near the exit ramp, ready to move in seconds. As Cole approached, the passenger door opened and one of two plainclothes officers stepped out. A tall, lean man with alert eyes and an earpiece nodded in greeting. She's still running her mouth. Worse, Cole said flatly. She thinks she won. Typical, said the officer, cracking his knuckles. She doesn't know we flipped the witness last night. Nope, and she gave us everything we needed when she opened that mouth in court. The second officer in the driver's seat leaned out. Clock's ticking. She'll be headed this way. Soon. Cole checked his watch. 3 minutes. He turned to face the garage entrance, hands resting calmly in his pockets. Angela's silver luxury car would come through here. She always parked on the second level, habit, vanity, or both. Cole had memorized her routines months ago. That's how cases like this were built, not with explosions, but with patterns and patience. Radio is live, the first officer confirmed. Units on the perimeter are in place. We'll box her in if she tries anything cute. Cole nodded once. No dramatics. We do this quiet, clean. Just then, the low hum of a powerful engine echoed from the garage ramp above. The silver car came into view, sleek, polished, and expensive. Cole didn't move. She was right on schedule. And she had no idea what was waiting for her at the bottom of that ramp. Angela's silver coupe glided smoothly down the ramp of the courthouse parking garage, the faint purr of the engine echoing off the concrete walls. She adjusted her sunglasses in the rearview mirror, still smiling to herself. The press had eaten up every word she said outside, just as she expected. She thrived on control, on spectacle. And once again, she had turned the courtroom into her stage. She tapped her fingers on the steering wheel, glancing at her phone mounted beside the dash. A new message from her assistant popped up. Meeting at 4 moved to 5. Congrats on today. Angela smirked. Of course they moved it. They always wait for me. She reached the bottom of the ramp, and instantly, something felt off. 2 black SUVs were parked awkwardly near the exit. Blocking it. No other cars in sight. Her fingers paused on the wheel. A figure stepped into view. Detective Cole. Angela's heart gave the tiniest skip, but she masked it quickly. She slowed the car, her window down just a crack. Cole approached calmly, methodically. Behind him, the plainclothes officers flanked the vehicle, one on each side, hands at their belts, not threatening but clearly ready. Angela leaned toward the window, her voice touched with sarcasm. Come to wave me off, detective. Or maybe ask for an autograph. Cole stopped just a foot from her window. He pulled out his badge, holding it up without flair. Angela Winters, he said, voice level and firm, you are under arrest for witness tampering, obstruction of justice, and perjury. For a split second, Angela blinked, just once, a subtle flicker of disbelief. What the hell are you talking about? She snapped. That's ridiculous. We have sworn testimony from a protected witness. And thanks to your own words in court today, a signed confession, even if you didn't realize it. He gestured to a small body cam clipped discreetly to his collar. It's all recorded. You gave us exactly what we needed. Angela's smile evaporated. This is a stunt. You won't get away with this. Cole nodded once to his team. The officers moved quickly. One opened her door, the other reached for her hands. "You're done talking now, Ms. Winters." She didn't resist at first. She was too stunned. As the cuffs clicked shut behind her back, the realization began to bloom. Not just that she was being arrested, but that she'd handed them everything on a silver platter. And for the first time in years, Angela Winters had nothing to say. Angela stood frozen beside her car, the cold steel of the handcuffs biting into her wrists. The smooth confidence that had radiated from her just minutes ago was gone, replaced by a stunned, hollow silence. Her mouth hung slightly open, as if she were still trying to form a protest that refused to come. The two plainclothes officers stood firmly beside her, reading her rights in even, rehearsed tones. She turned her head toward Cole, eyes narrowing. "You set this up." He didn't flinch. "No, you did. I just made sure someone was listening." Angela scoffed. "You think a few words taken out of context are enough to bring me down? I've walked away from worse." "You didn't walk away today," Cole said simply. Angela's voice began to rise, desperate now. "You think this will hold? My lawyers will have this tossed by morning. Your so-called witness is probably some ex-employee I fired for sleeping on the job." Cole took a small step closer. There was no gloating in his voice, just quiet certainty. "You threatened a witness, promised them incentives, sent emails from your company domain, then walked into that courtroom and confirmed you knew exactly what you were doing. You called me a nobody, Angela, but nobodies don't bring wire recordings, sworn affidavits, and court orders to a press conference." Angela stared at him, her breathing shallow, her composure unraveling. "You tricked me." Cole shook his head. "You tricked yourself. You thought you were untouchable. You thought the courtroom was a stage and I was just part of the scenery." She looked away, her jaw clenched tightly. Rage flared in her eyes, but behind it, panic. Cole leaned in just enough for her to hear the next words clearly, his tone low and final. "This case wasn't about proving you were guilty. It was about giving you the time and rope to do it yourself. And you did, right on schedule." Angela felt her knees weaken slightly, but the officers held her steady. Her voice was barely above a whisper now. "I want my lawyer." "You'll have one," Cole said. "In processing." He turned and gave a brief nod to the officers. 7 minutes ago, Angela had stood on the courthouse steps, ridiculing the man she believed was beneath her. Now, she was realizing the truth. Detective Cole hadn't said a word because he didn't need to. He already knew how this story would end. The police SUV door slammed shut behind Angela with a heavy finality, the metallic echo bouncing off the walls of the parking garage. From her seat in the back, she stared ahead in disbelief, her hands still cuffed behind her. Her designer blazer was rumpled, one earring missing, and the sheen of control that once surrounded her had crumbled entirely. The vehicle began to move, slowly navigating the exit ramp toward daylight. Just as the SUV emerged onto the street, the press spotted it, and chaos erupted. Cameras swiveled, reporters broke into a frenzy of movement, microphones extended like spears. They'd been waiting for a quote from Angela's lawyer. They weren't expecting this. "Wait, what's happening?" one shouted. "Is that Angela Winters?" Another gasped. "Is she under arrest?" The flashing bulbs lit up the inside of the SUV like a strobe. Angela instinctively turned her face away, but it was too late. The cameras had caught it all. Her pale, stunned expression, the glint of handcuffs, the sheer disbelief etched into her features. It was the photo every outlet would run before the hour was over. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. There was nothing to say. She had made sure the spotlight was always on her, and now it was, just not in the way she had planned. As the SUV pulled away, leaving the chaos behind, Angela's image lingered in the minds of the onlookers like a ghost, evidence of how quickly power could dissolve under the weight of justice. Back in the garage, Detective Cole remained standing in the same spot beside her silver car. He hadn't moved yet, simply watching the swirl of media through the open structure like a man watching the tide recede after a storm. One of the officers walked up beside him, shaking his head slightly. "She didn't even see it coming." Cole responded quietly, "They never do." Reporters were already pulling out phones, streaming live. The story had legs now. It wasn't just another corruption trial, it was the public fall of Angela Winters, a Titan-turned suspect. Her words from the courthouse steps were already being replayed online, cut together with clips of her being escorted in cuffs. She had written her own ending, and the world was watching it unfold in real time. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the steps of the courthouse as the media frenzy finally began to simmer. The black SUV carrying Angela Winters had disappeared around the corner, but the shock of her arrest still hung thick in the air. Reporters paced, phones pressed to ears, camera crews barking orders. News vans lined the street like vultures circling fresh prey. Out of the main doors, Detective Cole stepped calmly into the sunlight. Unlike Angela's earlier exit, there were no theatrics. No entourage, no flash. Just quiet footsteps and a man who knew exactly what had just unfolded, and why. A few reporters noticed him first. They turned, hesitating. Then one bold journalist stepped forward, recorder already rolling. "Detective Cole, do you have a statement on the arrest of Angela Winters?" Cole paused at the bottom of the steps, straightened his coat, and looked out at the crowd. He wasn't one for speeches. He preferred his work to speak for itself. But this moment wasn't about him. It was about the truth. About the idea that no one, no matter how wealthy or loud, was above the law. He nodded slightly. Justice isn't about headlines. It's not about being loud, or powerful, or connected. It's about evidence, integrity, and time. A few more reporters pushed closer, their microphones reaching out like vines. Cole continued, his voice calm but firm. "She called me a nobody. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Because 7 minutes after court adjourned, the evidence she gave us with her own words finished what we started months ago." A quiet murmur ran through the crowd. Cameras continued to roll. "She underestimated the law," Cole said. "She mistook silence for weakness, and confidence for immunity. But the law doesn't care about the car you drive or the name on your building. It only cares about the truth." He stepped away from the microphones then, clearly done. No theatrics, no mic drop, just quiet resolution. As he walked toward the edge of the plaza, his phone buzzed. A message from the DA's office, "Booking complete. Charges filed." Cole exhaled slowly, pocketed the phone, and disappeared into the flow of people. Angela Winters had written her story like she'd always lived, loud, proud, and above reproach. But Cole had written the final chapter. And in the end, the quiet man she'd mocked in court had the last word.